Now we're going to talk a little bit about poetry. Just a couple of reminders to keep in mind when you're doing poetry. A lot of the questions are the same kinds of questions that you would have about other passages, but you need to keep in mind when you're reading poetry a couple of extra things. For one, they're going to ask you questions about the meaning of the poem or what was meant by something sometimes. So what you have to remember is it's not, when you're reading a regular story, usually, or most of what they say, they mean literally what they say. Whereas here, a lot of times they're using figurative language. They're saying one thing, but it means something else. So you need to really go line by line and make sure you understand what they're really saying about what's going on, and does it make sense with the topic of the poem. Okay, so they're not usually literally meaning something, like and very often there's something that's not literal and it's figurative instead. It might be a metaphor, it might be personification, it might be similes, etc. Okay, sometimes they can be confusing, so when you are analyzing it, even though you only have to write a main idea for the whole paragraph, or the whole stanza, which is like our paragraph, you still need to read each line and think, okay, what does that line mean? Now what does that line mean? Now what does that line mean? Then go back and say, okay, now what do these all mean together? Don't just read it like you read a regular story. You need to stop on each line like we do when we've done poems in class. Now, after you finish the stanza, then you can decide what the main idea is after you've thought about each line. Now remember, a stanza, that's a group of lines. When they say a line, they're talking about what they have numbered. They will number the lines for you. When they talk about a stanza, that is where it's grouped and there's a space between it. Okay, that's like it's similar to it being a paragraph. It's a grouping of lines. All right, a lot of times they will ask you about repetition. They will say, why did they use the repetition? And we've got a wrong spelling here. I don't know. I can't do it. My pen is missing, so we're doing the best we can. Repetition. It's supposed to be spelled like that, right there. So when they're talking about repetition, that means sometimes there's a word that's repeated, or there's a whole phrase that gets repeated, and that's usually being repeated to emphasize it or to call attention to it. So they're usually going to ask you, what does it emphasize? What is saying that phrase or that word over and over again emphasize? They might also ask you about a rhyming pattern, how the rhyming pattern gives some kind of meaning. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, drama and plays, which is the same thing. Drama is a category of what you call the category when you have plays. And a play, when you have, it's written out form of what's going to be on a stage. So the thing to remember on a drama, usually it's a story, so it's like a narrative passage, except that you have to pay attention to who's talking. It's a lot of dialogue, and there's a lot of stage directions and narrator information. Remember, the stage directions can affect the answer choice you choose. So if it asks you a question around an area where there are stage directions, you need to read those and make sure you know what that person is doing. If it tells the person, the actor, to run across the stage, you need to know that they're running when they're saying something. And the question will be related to all of it, the stage directions, what the narrator has said, as well as the dialogue. You have to consider all of it. Remember, main ideas on this, you do them kind of chunk by scene, or maybe a couple in a scene. Anytime like a new person comes in, that needs to be like, okay, something different's about to happen. Okay, so you can chunk them. You do not have to do every line. Okay, another thing we have a lot of questions about is different types of word meaning. You guys usually do pretty well when you're choosing the dictionary meaning and it gives you all the definitions like they had in the passage we just did, or when it just asks you which of the following is the best way it's being used. Those aren't too hard. These are a couple of ways that they try to get word meaning from you, and it tricks you guys sometimes. Okay, one of them, sorry, I forgot. Remember, they will almost never ask you for a simple definition. It's not going to be just the regular definition that's in the dictionary. You're going to have to take what's in the dictionary and say, okay, this describes the same thing, because they're going to put it in different words than your dictionary. It's not that easy. So they will ask you to choose the right definition from the dictionary. Like I said, you do that pretty well. choose the purpose for including the word. So it might say, why do you think they chose this word? Well, that means you need to look up the word and make sure you know the definition they're talking about before you try to answer that. They might use the origin of the word to help you decide the meaning, and I'm going to talk about one of those in just a minute. Okay, right here. I don't want this to trick you. You will see these, and we've had a couple of these before. The dog's ears appear translucent when he holds his head just right. Now that's the sentence up here. There's our sentence. It's an S, sorry. There's the sentence. Now, it will then say, read this information about the origin of the word translucent. And it says it's from the Latin lucere, meaning to shine. Now, this is just extra information. You can still use the dictionary. Just look, before you let that confuse you, look this up. Look up the word. Don't let this confuse you. This is something they're adding in extra that could help you. Okay, they might ask you, they might have words down here that say, how does this word help you know what this means or something. But right now, just look this up. What does the word mean? When you look it up, use that definition, and then you could add this and say, okay, does this match up? Okay, this word came from the Latin lucere, but it means to shine. So probably that's going to have something to do with it. But what you want to watch out for is don't let this trick you down here. Because if you look at just this, then you might think it's that answer. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not. This is not the right answer. But this sounds like it is, doesn't it? If you look it up, then what you're going to find out is that translucent means that that it's a see-through. It's a little bit see-through. You can see, and the reason shine matches that is because light can shine through it. So if you think about a dog, like a dog with really thin ears, and if the light hits it right, the light would kind of shine through it. They're a little bit really thin ears. Okay? It's something you can see the light come through, or you can sometimes see other things through. Okay, so keep that in mind. The definition, if you look it up in the dictionary, you would find out this is right. This could have tricked you into choosing this. So use this, but use the dictionary as your primary source, and then let this just add to it. When it throws in the Latin, it also might throw in Greek, remember. Okay, don't let that get you distracted. Use the dictionary. Whoops. Sorry, I'm missing my pen, guys. If y'all know where my pen is, help me out. Okay, another way they will ask you for word meaning is they will say, which phrase from the passage helps the reader understand the meaning of the word in paragraph blank? Okay, they're not asking for the definition. Oh, this should be a blank right here, the word blank. And it'll have an underlined word right here, right there. So it would say the word dog, which obviously we know that, but whatever, it will say the word something in there. So it'll have a fancy word there that you may not know, or you might know, so be careful. Remember these words, you always look them up when they're asking about them, because they sometimes will purposely choose a word that has multiple meanings to trick you and make sure you actually use the dictionary, because they expect you to use it. So they're not asking for the definition. They are asking about which one of these, or which one of the choices below that would help. It'll have sentences from the passage. So what you have to do first, you look up the word and make sure you know what the meaning is. Maybe even write down a couple of words over to the side. Then you go back and read the whole paragraph to make sure you understand how it's being used. Then and only then you read the choices. It'll have A, B, C, D, and they'll have different sentences. It's a terrible A, C, and D. Okay? And when they have the choices, it's going to be sentences from the passage. You need to go back and say, which one of these has evidence in it that would actually tell me what my word appear means, whatever that word is. This is not a sample question, it's just an example of how they will ask it. Okay? So don't let that confuse you. Make sure you are paying attention to how it relates.